We won't hesitate to help. US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says her government will rescue more smaller banks if they get into trouble, as concerns about the banking sector soften. And music in the air. We'll find out how streaming is driving a resurgence in the global music industry. Welcome to World Business Report. I'm Jonathan Josephs. Thank you for joining us, whether you're in the UK or around the world. Are the jitters for the global banking sector over? That's the question that many anxious investors are continuing to ask after the weekend rescue of Credit Suisse by UBS. In the last half hour or so, the US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has continued to offer reassurances that the banking system is stable in a speech to bankers in Washington. She's been saying that the US government is prepared to help more banks if that's what's needed.
The government's recent actions have demonstrated our resolute commitment to take the necessary steps to ensure that depositors' savings and the banking system remain safe. Our intervention was necessary to protect the broader US banking system. And similar actions could be warranted if smaller institutions suffered deposit runs that pose the risk of contagion.
Well, let's take a look at the latest on the financial markets, and we can see things are in positive territory. A good open here in the United States with the S&P and the Dow both up. Similar picture in London and Germany. Investors perhaps accepting some of those reassurances from policymakers and politicians. I think we can move on and we can see some of the banking shares that are being traded here in London. HSBC, Standard Chartered, they're doing pretty well. So too NatWest. These are some of the stocks that lost value yesterday as those concerns grew about UBS and Credit Suisse and that rescue deal, what it meant for the banking sector. Well, let's cross from London to New York and speak to our North America business correspondent, Samira Hussain, who joins us. Samira, thanks very much. Just wonder, what more has Janet Yellen been saying in this speech, and what sort of reassurances is it giving to investors?
I think, based on that last clip that you played, the end was really the salient part of what she was saying. Not only is she reassuring everyone that, in fact, the American banking system is safe, but that they are prepared to go in and help any other banks that are struggling. And that has given a lot of people much more confidence that the extraordinary measures that we saw take place a few weeks ago when it came to the Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, that the regulators here in America are prepared to step in and to offer support to other banks as well. So that has really reassured a lot of people in terms of the health and safety of the banking system here in the United States.
You talk about those reassurances, but First Republic is another US bank that is in trouble. There are efforts going on to rescue it, led by Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan, one of the biggest banks on Wall Street. What impact is that having? Are we seeing something? Is that working?
Between the rescue efforts that are being mobilized by JP Morgan and spearheaded by Jamie Dimon, and the reassurances that we've heard just now from Janet Yellen, we're seeing that shares of First Republic have jumped up by more than 25% in trading today. Remember that the bank shares had cratered by more than 75% over the last week and a half, as investors were very concerned that it could possibly be the next bank to fail. But these kinds of reassurances coming from the banking sector and from the Treasury Secretary has really lifted confidence in the bank's stability. And
Samira, how much of this newfound confidence that we're seeing on the stock market is investors thinking perhaps the US Federal Reserve, the central bank, will hold off when it comes to raising interest rates? They are, of course, ending their two-day meeting tomorrow, and the expectation had certainly been that they would put interest rates up.
Yes, and I think that's pretty much the consensus still, that they are going to raise interest rates, but by 1/4 percentage point. And then we will hear more from Jerome Powell and his colleagues in terms of what their thinking is. Remember that the Federal Reserve is caught in a tough position. It still wants to fight inflation and was being seen as being too slow to actually tackle inflation, and they didn't raise interest rates fast enough. But now we're seeing the impact that fast rising interest rates is having on other parts of the American economy.
Smeara Hossain, thank you so much for the latest on the banking sector there in New York. Now let's move to Sri Lanka, which is no longer a bankrupt nation. Those are the triumphant words of the president, who is hoping that the worst of his country's economic woes are now in the past. That's because the International Monetary Fund has agreed a nearly $3 billion bailout, with the first payment expected this week. There have been shortages of goods such as food and medicines as a result of pandemic issues, as well as rising energy prices, populist tax cuts and inflation, which has been at more than 50%. Here's a little bit of what the president had to say.
Sri Lanka is no longer a bankrupt nation. Therefore, we can restart normal transactions. As our foreign exchange situation improves, we will gradually roll back import restrictions. Essential goods, medicine and things needed for the tourist industry will be in the first round.
Sri Lanka's president there on the economic challenges for his country. Now let's have a change of tune and talk about the music industry, because despite the delicate state of the global economy, a growing number of us are, it seems, splashing out on streaming services. It's one of the big drivers of a 9% growth in how much we're spending on music. According to the industry body, the IFPI, worldwide sales hit $26.2 billion last year. And we are joined by Universal Music Group, which is one of the biggest record labels out there. Universal's Adam Granit, who is the CEO for the Africa, Middle East and Asia region. Adam, good to have you with us. I want to start with this. Is it just streaming that's driving this growth? Because vinyl, it seems, is also doing pretty well.
Yes. Well, streaming is certainly the biggest component. It's 67% of our revenues. But yes, physical as a category grew as well in 2022, and vinyl is the biggest component of the physical piece, up over 17%.
And how much of this, though, is this resurgence for vinyl is helping the industry more generally? Because it's obviously something different when people can touch a well-designed physical product, and when you have whether it's a vinyl collection or a CD collection, you can touch it and you can hold it. I mean, Metallica, I heard, are even buying their own factory to print vinyl because there is such a demand out there for that.
Yes, indeed. The demand is extraordinary. I think it shows the value of music and the value of collectibles. And also, I think with vinyl, it's very important for consumers who want to display their collection as well.
And Adam, what impact is the end of the pandemic having on the music industry? How much is it helping the fact that people are now able to go out to concerts again, and they're able, and recording artists are able to meet with their colleagues, they're able to meet with their record label people, they're able to meet with their collaborative partners? How much is that helping to put new music out there, and that's pushing sales?
Right. It's certainly helping the artist development process. When you can connect a song or a couple songs with an artist, you can build that direct artist-to-fan connection. It's very, very powerful. And I think as well, it also helps our music travel around the world better. When artists can travel and be in various markets, it really helps seal that connection.
And for years, Adam, artists have been complaining that streaming in particular is not great for them because they don't get as much money as they do through physical sales. What is your company, Universal, doing to try and redress some of that balance and make sure they do get their fair share?
We obviously work very closely with our artists. And I think in the initial days of streaming and subscription, there were some concerns. But I think as people understand the differences around how royalties are paid, when we used to sell primarily CDs, of course, the artists would earn the bulk of their royalties up front. But of course, with streaming, it's a much longer time period and a much longer horizon. I think artists understand that better, and I think perhaps even appreciate the long-term reliable revenue stream.
Adam Granit from Universal Music, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And don't forget, there's plenty more on the website. There'll be more on Janet Yellen's speech to in Washington about the banking situation. Thanks very much for watching. You can get in touch with me and some of the team on social media. I'm at Jonathan Josephs. That's all from Wild Business Report.